Sally Bishop was a very well-known artist in Boston. Her work was carried by the Arden Gallery on Newbury Street. She was known as a good teacher. She taught at the Worcester Museum School of Art. She was a bit of a force of nature. She had spiky hair. When she came into a room, the energy, the air currents changed. And she was blunt, very blunt. She always spoke her mind. I met her in church when I was teaching a class called Drama as Doctrine. We were looking at some plays being done by the theater companies in central Massachusetts. And I was interested in decoding the assumptions in those plays about the nature of God and the nature of human relationships. So I had titled this first series of classes, Identity and Transformation. I don't think that I got very far into the class before Sally said out loud, "What do you mean by identity and transformation, Linda Privitera?" I was like, I have no idea what I said in response, no idea. But it must have been good enough of an answer for her to invite me to her studio, to see her works in process and the completed paintings. And she said, "What do you see?" Well, what I saw was her identity. I saw her transformation as played out in canvas. So symbols in her work that appeared repeatedly in her paintings, and also movement. "What do you see?" she said. And so I told her I saw her. And I tried to explain what I could about her work. She turned to me and said, "There's more creativity in you than just your programming. You need to do art." Well, that was kind of a shocking statement to me. But the week of her death, I was enrolled in my first art class at the school where she taught. She called me out when she said that. She saw more in me than I had known about myself. She summoned out what I could be. In today's gospel, Simeon and Anna call out what Jesus would be. Kind of a stunning, sudden moment. It's been depicted by many artists through the centuries, Raphael, and I think the one I like best is the Rembrandt, but there are icons of this scene, and of course, they're beautiful visually, but you can't really tell what's going on. There's a clump of people and a baby, and there's light in certain places. But you have to read the Gospel of Luke to know what's really happening there. Now, Mary and Joseph, 40 days after Jesus' birth, present him at the temple. This was a common religious observance to present the firstborn male. But it was also a time when people who had been separated from the community by a life transition of one sort or another could come back in and re-enter the community. On this day, 2 elders approached this couple with a child, a man and a woman, who greet them with more insight about Jesus. Anna and Simeon had spent their lives, as near as we can tell, watching and waiting for God to be revealed. They were faithful. They kept their eyes open. Here, the regular narrative about a regular religious observance stops. And we're open to so much more than we thought was going on. This Jesus child is more than he appears. this Jesus child will affect the lives of many. You can hear it as an echo of the previous revelations. I mean, Advent was only 40 days ago, and we had angel stories and shepherd stories and magi stories. And now we've moved into Epiphany, and these proclamations about Jesus continue. But they're a little different because we get a hint of Lent and Holy Week. A sword will pierce your heart also. Identity and transformation. So the church marks this day as significant, as a feast of the presentation, or as it used to be called, Candlemas, a day when the candles would be brought and blessed so that light could be taken for worship at home or in community. And so we bless the day when the particular light for our lives was blessed by two particular witnesses, so that we might again see Jesus and name who he is, and look perhaps for a sudden appearance. We stop, and we see the deepness that lies behind everything. Perhaps someone has called you out, told you about the light that they see within you. Sometimes it takes another person to see what we can't see in ourselves. Someone tells us that we are found, we are at home, we are loved. Today we're going to celebrate this man in our midst who was called to be a priest, ordained 50 years ago today, called out to serve more than himself. Maybe you want to remember who called you out to your particular vocation. Who called you to sing, to play music, to paint? Who called you to be a chaplain to those who are ill, to come alongside a lonely elder, to befriend a child? Who called you to feed others by your regular offering here? Maybe you've even been called out of retirement to serve other people. Sometimes it's not just individuals that call us forward. Sometimes it is the demands of history. The demands of history that call forth the godly life in each of us. This week was full of heavy remembrances. Monday was Holocaust Remembrance Day. And on Friday and Saturday here in Taillefer Hall, thanks to the brilliance of the Bold City Opera Company, we were called to remember particular witnesses of the Holocaust. Now, we often think about Dietrich Bonhoeffer and his writings, but maybe you didn't know about Alfred Delp. Alfred Delp was a Jesuit priest in Nazi Germany. He was ordained in the late 1930s. When he was rector of St. George Church in Munich, he helped Jews escape to Switzerland. Through his sermons and books on Catholic social teaching, he drew a lot of attention, not all of it good. He was arrested in 1944 when the plot to assassinate Hitler had failed. He was accused of being part of that assassination attempt. He had no part in it, but he was sentenced to death anyway because he was a threat, because the truth he spoke and wrote, the liturgy he celebrated, didn't match what the country wanted. He was put to death this day in 1945 on the Feast of the Presentation. All of life is Advent, he wrote. watching and waiting for the light of Christ to be revealed. On this day, his light joined the greater light. So, who or what calls you to be who you are meant to be? Perhaps it's your 12-step group who see health in you, value your honesty. Perhaps it's your small discipleship gathering, or it could be a stranger, or an old man or an old woman here at church. Who or what summons the light within you? And do we take it as our responsibility, as part of our witness, to call that forward in others? God waits and watches for us to appear on the edge of our own threshold moments. We're always going to be met with unconditional regard, with unconditional love. Sometimes that understanding comes suddenly. Witnesses may call us to kindness and compassion from a pulpit in Washington, D.C. Our calling out may be in strange places and voices we don't know. It may be as sudden and as disruptive as what the prophet Malachi says. Or it may come more gradually. The poet Emily Dickinson prefers it that way. She says, the truth must dazzle gradually, little softer. Jesus called out his disciples, summoned them as witnesses to what God was doing, and they called out others to their new identity, to transformation. And so this rich life of faith continues. We come to the table where Jesus is continually presented to us. Sometimes we're watching and waiting for God to show up, for truth to be revealed. And sometimes God is watching and waiting for us to respond, to be called out into God's work. Bless the ones who see you. Bless those who see Jesus. Bless what you can when you see the light of Christ in others. And be willing to be an agent of identity and transformation yourself. For you too are a child of God, and your life has meaning and purpose.